the Dreamtek Hangouts. Welcome to our series, and today's episode is about social broadcasting and creating a learning strategy. I'm joined today by some great experts. I've got Don Taylor, who's the chairman of the Learning and Skills Group. I've got Tom Blades, who's head of production at Peugeot Sales Academy. I've got our head animator, Luke Hyatt, who's in the broadcast pod. My name's Dharmesh Makwana. I'm the general manager for video at Dreamtek. So, Don, thanks very much for coming down.
Always good to come to the Dreamtek studio.
Yeah, no, great. So, today we're talking about building a learning content strategy. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the Learning and Skills Group and, discussing learning and content strategy. Is that something that, you're talking about recently? Or?
It's really become terribly important and very popular at the moment. A lot of people are talking about content. And I think there's a good reason for that. Until about 10 years ago, it was very clear what learning and development's job was. It was to create content and distribute and deliver it. But to create it was the important part of it. About 2007, Clive Shepherd came up with a 2-layer model, which then Nick Shackleton-Jones evolved to a 3-layer model. Then I, in about 2013, produced a 5-layer pyramid, which then I turned into a 6-layer pyramid, which basically talks about the different types of sources of content you've got. From externally commissioned stuff, very high quality stuff right at the top, down to the internet at the bottom, being everything that's freely available. Second layer down, you've got internally produced stuff. A lot of people see that's their role, but it isn't. It's part of our role. Really, though, we should only be producing stuff internally once we've done everything else and looked everywhere else we can for content. What I'm really excited about with Peugeot and what Tom's going to talk about is the fact that you've worked together to have a really smart strategy whereby they create stuff internally, they've got user-generated content, plus there's some external commissioning of stuff that you've done, but it all fits together well, and they're using their skills where they should be used on producing content only, where it's really necessary, where they've got that secret source of internal information that they can do the best possible job of producing the material for. And that's when you should do it.
That's it. I mean, it's really interesting seeing it put in terms of a pyramid. But I'm going to move over to Tom now. And Tom, what did you think? What do you think of that little structure there that Don's come up with?
I think that's exactly right. One of the major things that we do here is we do 3 things really. We create content for our virtual classrooms, we create content for our e-learning, etc. And then it's really important that we create create content for that point of learning, so that point of need of learning. So it has to be readily available, very quick turnaround, internally done to the best of our capabilities, and accessible to everybody. So yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. And I think, from my point of view, when we're saying, the first part is, do you have a learning content strategy? The way, we try and develop it at Dreamtek is saying, what is the problem you're trying to solve and what are the challenges you're trying to solve? And Tom, I think you touched on that, when we spoke originally, it was the point of need. And, maybe you can tell us about the original problem you're solving at Peugeot Sales Academy.
Yeah, so historically we have always delivered training to our network, and that's not just salespeople, that's also technicians out in the workplace via face-to-face learning. And what we found is that there's quite a high turnover of staff within our industry and also within our mark as well. And we need to get to them as fast as possible with kind of the welcome messages and what a great company they've come here to work for, what our brand stands for, but also some of those real key sort of building blocks into how to sell a vehicle, how to fix a vehicle, the Peugeot way. And we also work with Citroën and DS Automobiles, and DS Automobiles, for example, is a brand new brand, and for us to be able to create that content locally, be in control of that, give the DS people, which it's a very new brand, it's very new people, they're not sure of where they're going yet, to give them sort of control over what we do for them, it has been massively important. So it's that developing the content for the point of need of training, but also being in control of it is really important.
So, I mean, the way we've worked is, yeah, absolutely. We have that kind of pyramid system where we've done work where you've kind of commissioned us to do it, like animations. But a big part of what you do is creating your own content, isn't it, Tom? And
Yeah, so
we've worked together to sort of set you up with your own studio, really. And tell us a little bit about the kind of team you've got in terms of creating content.
Yeah, so in 2012, Dreamtek put our studio in, and every year we've built on the infrastructure of that. So we've increased the level of equipment that we have. So we're able to run multiple video sessions at one time. We can shoot in 4K, and we can do sort of very high-end productions. We were recently in a DS Automobiles were in their sort of talismanic showroom in Paris, shooting very high-end videos that then got used for both training and also for social media. And then we filtered that right down to the fact that we've got DSLR cameras that we could go and film how to change a cam belt on an engine, and that can be done within the hour, edited very roughly and out to our network very, very quickly, and both of those things excite us. Both of those things are really important to the way we work.
Tom, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
For a lot of people watching this who are learning and development professionals, they might say, well, that's all very well. These guys clearly have a lot of money to spend, and they've probably spent a long time training their people up to do this. It could sound quite removed from people's daily life. Can you reassure us that actually it's possible for any regular L&D Joe to do what you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. So we've taken people from our learning and development structure, so trainers, technical trainers, sales trainers, and we've put them through a series of training and also invested in them in the fact that we would give them time to practice, etc. But they are learning professionals. They are people that were stand-up trainers, right, and now they're film staff, they're editors, and for us, they're the really important people in our business because they know what we stand for. They know how a car goes together. They know the sales process and how to sell desire for our vehicles. So that's for us is the most important point. And just a point on that is that we're currently with Dreamtek going through a sort of the same sort of thing with a pub chain at the moment, and we're going to be doing the same thing with them. We're going to be taking their learning and development specialists, the people that develop their courses, and they're going to be, instead of developing content for stand-up training, they're going to be developing content for virtual classrooms. So that's running orders, it's scripts, and all those things. So yeah, that's really where we're at. So yeah, it's your staff now evolved.
That's an amazing and very heartwarming story. Did everybody make the change? Did some people find it easier than others?
Definitely, we've had some resistance. Resistance to change is part of anybody's business, I would say. But we thought we'd find a lot more resistance than we have, to be honest with you. So even some of the people that we foresaw being adverse to change are now presenters on cameras. They're virtual classroom leads, we call them here, but virtual classroom sort of development specialist, etc. So there has been casualties. I'm not going to say there's not, but it's definitely helped us out really.
Great. And with so before I go on, if you look at the sting in the left-hand corner, Dreamtek Hangouts hashtag. If you've got any questions, we'll be going for questions at the end. Post them on Twitter with the Dreamtek Hangout hashtag, or email them to info@dreamtek.tv, and the email address is in the corner. And if you've got any other questions or you want to ask us something later offline, info@dreamtek.tv is the place to go. You're talking about virtual classrooms there, Tom, and the other question I like to find out is in terms of building that strategy is about platforms. And what are the platforms you're currently using, because you've got quite a few, haven't you, to kind of reach your audience?
Yeah, so we currently use Adobe Connect, and that is an on-prem service which is supported by Dreamtek, and we wouldn't do it any other way, basically. And they're the specialists in that, that's for sure. but we use Adobe Connect, and we also use lots of other systems as well. So we use Vimeo to get our content out to our guys. We also use some apps that have been developed by Dreamtek and their partners, Virtual Forge, as well. So yeah, there are plenty of platforms in play.
Can I ask about
Yeah.
Adobe? I mean, at the Learning and Skills group, Tom, we also use Dreamtek, and you're right, I wouldn't have it any other way. They are the guys. What do you use it for? Because a lot of people, they hear Adobe Connect and they'll say, right, yeah, that's running webinars. Is that all you do with it, or do you use it for other things? And if you do, how do you run your online events?
So yeah, we kind of use it not the way it was designed for webinars. We actually have a full classroom suite that is built into there. So our guys log in, and there are predetermined rooms that have been built with content in them. We have a booking system that's been designed by Dreamtek that allows us to book those rooms out by the hour, by the license, and it divides the licenses up that way. So in those rooms we find video content, there is PowerPoint. We try to stay away from that as best as possible. We use a strategy here which is kind of like the one show, so everything is segments, and it's broken down into different media types and stuff, just to keep it interesting and interactive. So yeah, we use it in a very different way than just a webinar system. It's a full virtual classroom system, and we actually offer everything we offer attended, we offer a virtual classroom equivalent.
And you're talking, so virtual classrooms, another question I think is really key is, what other types of content. So we've got the virtual classroom sessions, which have got like a live element, and it's something Luke works on a lot, is kind of the pre-recorded content. So Luke, you've worked on a couple of projects recently. One was for Peugeot, which was creating a real story around secret shopping and explaining how to have a great experience for the shopper. And then other stuff you're doing is quite dense and quite reference, where people need it at that time. Luke, do you want to just tell us a bit about those kind of projects recently?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the client. I mean, you can go from, like with the Peugeot, it's quite high level. You're just conveying information through an easy to understand story. But we're also working with JLR on a very low level piece of work, which is like 60 videos that go through the very step-by-step process to use their LMS system. So it depends on what the client wants. It depends on what you're trying to portray to the viewer. Like Tom was saying, it all depends on what the intended audience is going to be. But also, you can. It's also adding that visual element that can help the story go along with the script that the client's given.
And I mean, maybe that kind of mix of content is kind of linked in with that pyramid, Don.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what Luke's talking about here is this stuff at the top, which is the externally commissioned stuff. But I'm also interested, of course, in when you've got webinars taking place and people doing things that are interactive, you're also creating user-generated content because people are interacting, and people will come up with stuff themselves, which, of course, is always usually circulated in some way, and people learn from it. Tom, how much does the Sales Academy drive content out, and how much, if at all, do you use user-generated content created either by people themselves or as a result of the interventions you're doing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So that was one of the things that we've wanted to try and increase. The user-generated content is something that we haven't stepped into before, but we've always really wanted to. And again, from our Dreamtek friends, we started using an app called Reflections, which allows for the user to video themselves selling a car, talking to a customer, etc., etc. And then we get them to share that video either with the group or with the trainer, and then onward from that, whether it's with the trainer or whether it's relevant to the group as well. So they're building up their own library of CPD, which is fine. That's what we want them to do. But they're also, as you said, creating user-generated content. And when it comes to the webinar, if they're involved at all in that way, because a lot of our stuff is the trainer is on the webcam and everybody else talks via text, but especially with our management programs, a lot of that is recorded. It's dual webcam and it's recorded and then sent out to them to be used as a kind of CPD or a kind of professional journal. So yeah, there's a lot of that around at the moment, and we're utilising what we call a vodcast, or a podcast by a video, so that we'll have these questions coming in off the Reflections apps, people asking, what had this problem in my dealership this week, and then they're addressed in a weekly vodcast by one of our management trainers. So I totally agree that this audience participation, as we call it, or user-generated content, is a huge part of engagement. And I think when you're talking about virtual classroom, anything you can do to keep that person engaged is a really important point, because you haven't got your eyes on that person as such.
Yeah, I'd also say that in terms of user-generated content, we have our own educational aspect here at Dreamtek, where we have an apprenticeship scheme, and the work we're asking them to create is very based on like motion graphics, making a website, putting it all together. And I think it's that integration of letting the students themselves kind of understand what the work involved is, and then we can come in later and kind of finesse that as assessors.
Tom, what place does sort of non-virtual training have mixed in with the content?
Yeah, these are cars, aren't they? You can't do everything online, can you, Tom?
No, that's very true. So it never replaces, and that's why we always offer an attended equivalent. And it's very odd to say it that way, because we always said we offer a virtual equivalent, but as of last year, 70% of our training was done via virtual classroom, meaning obviously that our massive take-up in our network, reaching people who've never reached before. But when it comes to the hands-on stuff for the cars in particular, we've changed our strategy. So they'll do 3 or 4 courses, and then they'll come in for the practical for those 3 or 4 courses all in one block. We used to say as well that some of the behavioural traits you would be lost via virtual classroom, but I think with technology that is really starting to come alive now. So we're even breaching over that gap at the moment as well. So there is face-to-face training, and there always will be a place for face-to-face training, but the ability to reach the people we've never reached before kind of outweighs some of that.
Tom, you mentioned behavioural stuff there, then you moved on. That's one of the big killers a lot of people have in their argument against virtual learning. I know that in Canada, bizarrely, it's possible to learn hairdressing virtually. You actually get sent a head and a wig, and you get instructed virtually on what you're doing. Behavioural stuff, how does that work online?
So it's an interesting point. When we first sort of breached the subject with our management trainers about behavioural training, there was, like you say, it was a complete block. How can you ever do that when you can't be in a room with somebody seeing their reactions? And then when we asked our trainers to go off and research it, we noticed that they did most of their research on YouTube and Vimeo and picked up on things. So there is an amount of process there, mind maps, those sort of skills, small video content that people would normally at their point of need of training go to YouTube, and we're asking them to come to us.
Wow.
And then that's backed up and furthered on with consultation sessions with the virtual classroom, and maybe virtual classroom on the move, as we're calling it, so using the Adobe Connect iOS app, so that they can, during a disciplinary or during a session where you need some sort of behavioural trait, they're in contact with the trainer at that point, so they can almost coach them along live, and that's a really exciting place to be. That's very high level management, and there's you obviously can't do that to the masses, but I think it's hitting the spot at that point, and I think that's the most important bit.
Wow. I've got a question here, and it might be one for Don as well. What is the entry level point for content creation if you want to start that strategy?
The entry level point.
I guess they're talking about budget, maybe.
Look, Tom, he's the expert. He's actually doing this. I just talk to other people who are doing it. Let's ask Tom first of all, and I'll come up with an answer. Tom, what's the entry level point? Where do you start?
Okay, so I think there's lots of different media that you can be involved in. So it was an interesting one that Luke was mentioning about that job they're doing for JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, who we are in close contact with. We're very friendly with, and we made all those videos for our LMS system ourselves. So we utilise that with a Captivate license, an Adobe Captivate license, video in the screens, and then doing a voiceover. Now, voiceovers are very accessible now. You can use iPhones and all sorts of things. You don't have to have proper sound recorders, although obviously that adds production value. So I think you have to look at what is your target audience and what level you want to reach them on. You know, what I always think, and Don made a really good point about, you know, the external commission pieces. When those agencies want to come in, when those agencies come in, they want to do the best job possible. Of course they do. You know, they don't want to leave people going, oh, you know, that doesn't really look the best as it possibly can. As an internal company, or as an internal to the company, you have that luxury of going, well, this is done for this budget, and you're able to reason with those people that it was done for this budget. And then if you produce something that is very high quality, they can see the difference. Whereas an agency doesn't have that model, because if you come in and you produce something for very little and it looks basic, you might never get the job where you're creating something that's very, very beautiful and high end. So I think it's totally scalable, and that's what people should realise. So DSLR cameras, I've seen some stuff done with iPhones. When we first started, we did some interviews for like our YouTube channel, Citroen YouTube channel, which was from the Top Gear show, or it was from the Clothes Show Live or something like that. Wherever we had a car placement, we would just rock up with an external microphone to the iPhone and a little monopod, and we do it with an internal person. That's very, very low tech, very, very low budget, very, very basic looking, but it fitted the need at the time. So I think it is completely scalable. I think you can go in as low as your audience is happy to view, and then you can, like you say, you can either create that content all the way up to the very high-end stuff, or you can create that content up to a point and then get your external commission people and get your external companies to come in. We're very lucky here that we are able to get involved with both, and we use Dreamtek to kind of turbocharge those events. So they supply us with kit, they supply us with know-how, what kit we should have, and they also supply us with people as well whenever we need them. So yeah, I think it's more a question of what's your audience and what's your audience wanting to see.
I think part of the answer obviously is get Dreamtek involved. That's going to solve some of your problems. But also, the point about the externally commissioned stuff is right, Tom. It used to be you would externally commission anything you couldn't do technically internally, including quick and dirty stuff. That's not the case anymore. Now it's commissioned if it needs to be high profile, long duration, or it's high risk. And it's really important that people see the value of the importance of the message and the value of the production. So it might be just something like company culture, but it's so important that everyone has to see an ultra slick job, because that conveys the importance of that to the CEO. But beneath that, most of the content which gets produced these days, in my experience, what's important is speed. Get the stuff out as fast as possible, and the recipient isn't looking for something that's high production value, although it's high value to them. It's about something that helps them right now. And for that, it doesn't matter if it's done on an iPhone, or indeed if it's not multimedia at all. Sometimes words on a page are still a valid way of learning, and that's your lowest possible entry point.
And that's it. It's kind of, you know, when we talk to customers and we know that outsourcing it is not the best option, because it is, you know, doesn't fall under that factor, it is enable giving them the tools. And I mean, the tools that are great entry-level tools are a virtual classroom, one small virtual classroom. You can get those webinars stored up to the cloud and create a bank of learning. And you know, those things that, yes, you could use an iPhone, or you could use something in between, like an entry-level camera, and the tools. And it's just saying, you know, let's start with a few tools. And another thing that's been really useful is a kind of a retained employee. So you've got someone to just churn out all of those edits for you and do the simple task, but you can kind of scale it, you know, with one person. One
thing I would say to anybody watching, video can be variable quality, but sound is terribly important. People will stop listening, stop watching when they can't hear it. So make sure your sound is good, get a good mic, And also, I'd get a good editing tool. Fortunately, there are lots of good free tools out there like Audacity, which is great for free editing stuff. I feel like a complete, I don't know, imposter coming here to Dreamtek and talking about that. But anyway, yes, you can get some great tools out there, but make sure you look after your sound.
I've got another question here, and it's about the future. What do you see the sort of the next tools and the next trends with learning?
Can I answer this one? Because
Yes,
I'd then like
please.
to bounce over to Tom.
Yeah.
I do a survey every year. I say, what's going to be hot in learning and development? This year I was sort of 50-50. Shall I include virtual reality or not? I didn't include it. Everyone came back and said, why didn't you include virtual reality? So my answer is, VR is going to be hot. And I'd like to ask Tom, and Luke indeed as well, anything where you're doing hands-on, that's where people are seeing the value of VR in the future. Do you agree? Do you think that's the next hot thing?
Yeah, I think that is absolutely crucial. We are currently just talking to somebody about doing some 360 videos that we want to be able to do ourselves, because that's the way that we've been programmed here, and we've got the kind of guys that want to do that and want to invest in it. So yeah, I would say virtual reality, the 360 videos. We are also sort of toying with wearable technology, so first-person view, especially with sales and things. You know, like it kind of adds something to see somebody actually physically sell a car. We're struggling a little bit to get the wearable tech to work at the moment, and get it that's affordable to use. But yeah, definitely. And the other thing that I think is where we're going at the moment, it's really exciting, is the live broadcast. So Facebook are doing it, obviously we're doing it through Google Hangout and YouTube on air, which we're going to be using tomorrow as well. So for us, you know, this draw of a live feed brings people in, and then we can sort of hopefully fire some other messages at them at the same time, and that's great for us.
Cool. Yeah, I think I can speak as a big fan of gaming and technology in general. I've definitely got an Oculus Rift under my desk that I still need to open and get a look at. But yeah, I think definitely, I mean, a mixture of all the latest stuff, I think, is going to be an interesting hybrid. You've got, I saw the other day, it was a game developer, and rather than interviewing them in a studio with live action cameras, they actually interviewed them as game characters in their own engine. And I think that's something that could possibly be a thing of the future, where rather than having to, you know, buy a studio, get everything together, you can actually just wear free headsets and have a nice chat together with any set you desire. I mean, but of course, it also, the main important thing is the content, you know, that you're trying to portray, best served by VR. Like if it's cooking, maybe not, because that's a lot of work just to do something in the kitchen. But if it's like, you know, data, numbers, graphs, these can all be really well represented in a virtual capacity, and I think that's where something interesting could arise. Also, we're looking. Sorry, Don. We are also really interested in 360 video at Dreamtek, and that's our next big push, technology-wise. So.
Okay, I could put Dharmesh on the spot. 360 video.
Yep.
Can we do anything with it at Learning Technologies in January?
I would say almost definitely. You know,
almost definitely. There's no such thing. Definitely.
Definitely, we're going to be doing something 360. I think there's, you know, it's exciting. It's just kind of saying, let's step inside and kind of explore things. You know, whether it's, you know, 360 in the Hangouts room, or maybe in the, you know, the keynote stage. You know, I'd say, you know, find the right speaker, and it will be a great combination.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Okay.
They're not escaping.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks very much. We're out of time, guys. It's been really, really interesting chat. Thanks very much to Tom. Thanks to Luke. And, you know, if we missed your questions, we'll try and come back to you personally and catch up with you on the Google Plus page. And look forward to speaking to you on the next Hangout. Thanks very much.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.